Hello, I am Nicole Kuhn. This is the introduction to autism spectrum disorders for EDCI 711. I want to start by defining terms. Here is the idea definition of autism. The first point just lays out what autism is. I want to highlight a word that is very, very important. That word is often. Autism is often everything, but it is not always nothing. So that means we need to account for this. Two autistic people may be completely different in that one may be very highly functioning and one may need a lot of help to do everyday basic tasks. And because autism is a spectrum, we have to acknowledge that those differences occur. So I like to pound on that word often, and I will continue to do that through this presentation because there is no one autism. This idea amendments say that if it doesn't affect the child's academic performance, it doesn't count towards the idea definition. Once again, there's a DSM-5 definition you can look up. This is purely the idea definition. Let's talk about some common manifestations of autism spectrum disorder. First is that people with autism tend to have trouble in social interactions. They have difficulty reading emotions. They have difficulty allowing other people to speak, or they have difficulty speaking themselves. You often see speech-language impairment associated with autism. And I'll mention this a little bit later on, but it was described as being an associational thought pattern as opposed to a logical one. And that manifests itself in the form of thinking about connections rather than conclusions. And they speak about that. You often see restricted or repetitive behaviors, so they might be interested in learning only about presidents. They might be interested in only learning about music. They might be interested only in learning about math. And repetitive behaviors can be something as simple as being disturbed when the schedule shifts unexpectedly. It can be a variety of things. It can be tic associated, but the most common manifestation is that change is scary and challenging. I want to also stress that common is not always, and I said often earlier in the first slide. I'm going to say often again, and if you take one word out of this presentation, please let it be the word often. Autism has trends. It is not uniform. So with a rough understanding of what autism is and how it manifests itself, we need to ask the question, what causes autism? And the answer is, you can ask different scientists and they will give you different answers. We don't really know, though. We aren't sure. They suspect there are some genetic attributes. Some studies in the early 2000s suggested it was linked to vitamin D deficiency. There are a lot of co-diagnoses that are very common, particularly in women Rett syndrome, although that's a rare syndrome. Tourette syndrome, which is a tic disorder, are also very commonly associated with autism. But again, it comes down to that we aren't really sure, but that's okay because we know it's a thing. In the year 2000, autism was nowhere close to identified as it is today. They were only diagnosing it at a rate of about 1 in every 150 people. Now it is diagnosed at a rate of 1 in 54, and that rate has been going up steadily. It's much more common in boys than it is girls, about a 4-to-1 ratio. Different scientists have different opinions on why that is. It is lower in the Latinx population, although it is very equal or statistically equal in black and white populations. But the key takeaway here is that it is prevalent in different rates in different communities at different severities. So your classroom, you may not see any visibly autistic students, or if you work in a special needs classroom, you will see quite often a lot of them. As a spectrum disorder, since it covers a wide range, you will see very high functioning autistic people in your advanced AP classes, and you will see lower functioning autistic people who need more help, in a special needs classroom where that is their least restrictive environment. Next, I want to look at some common learning attributes of students with autism. And once again, often, these do not describe everyone. Oftentimes, they have a very strong set of rote memory skills. If you gave them their times tables, they'll have that down in 10 minutes. But if you try to work on them of what that times table actually means, that may be a little bit more of a challenge, especially since they tend to be visual thinkers. That visual thinker in them is going to struggle with just looking at the times tables and just seeing numbers. They tend to work better with deadlines, and open-ended assignments can lead to undue stress for students with autism. That again, just pounding that point of they tend to prefer things that are more organized. Closed-ended assignments are great. Papers with recommended links, good way to do a paper. But when you leave it open-ended, it can cause stress and not be a fun experience for the person with autism. Now that we've discussed some of the common learning attributes, let's talk about how we can accommodate them in the classroom. Focus on giving more variety in presentation, specifically focusing on increasing the amount of audio or visual learning opportunities available. Text-based tends to not be the best. Autistic people tend to be very visual thinkers. So if you have more physical, tangible demos, I've heard to help with spelling, having physical cutouts of the letters to allow them to help learn. Giving a strong sense of routine, and allowing for some flexibility to help remember that the world isn't completely routine, but once again, that varies depending on the student's needs. Giving deadlines that are firm, yet are reasonable. Autistic people tend to perform better or not worry when they have a good set of deadlines, as opposed to when assignments are very open-ended. Next, you want to give considerations for just they're going to not understand when their classmate is using sarcasm. It's going to be difficult for them. They're going to have troubles reading emotions for if they overshared. I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. TED's thought processes aren't logical, they're associational. As long as you work with that thought process in mind as a teacher, you'll be able to provide a more accommodating classroom. Next, I want to present a few resources. There are a lot of great autism charities. Some I've heard of very bad things about. I want to particularly call out Autism Speaks. Washington Post did a great article about them a while back, calling them out. Autism Speak often treats autism as a death sentence rather than a condition that people live with. And Autism Society, Autism Science Foundation are great. If you ever go visit our friends up north, Autism Canada, and autism, because it is very prevalent, like 1 in 54, it has a lot of local programs, so check your local listings, find what's right for you.